Hello everyone, DM Gashbad here, and today we have Game 2 of our Warhammer Fantasy Battles 8th Edition Path to Glory campaign. We are still in round 1, which means this will be a pitched battle scenario. I am using my Louts of Chaos warband, who worship Khorne. Real quickly, they consist of Sir Osis of the Liver, that's my champion. He has chaos armor, a shield, a hand weapon, a barded chaos steed, and a throwing axe. He has the Blessing of Khorne gift, which means that he can dispel a magic spell once per game. He also has a busted up leg for -1 movement that he got in the last game, but since he's riding a horse, it doesn't really matter. To the left, we have the leg biters. Those are 6 marauders with additional hand weapons. Then we have the booze hound, that is a single chaos hound. Behind that, we have Scalding Blood Porridge, my chaos ogre with additional hand weapon. Then we have the pitmen, 2 chaos warriors with shields, and behind them we have Harold Drownsodden, my single chosen with additional hand weapon. Facing off against the Louts in Game 2, we have the Hagsbrood. This is an undivided Chaos warband. They are all the offspring of a terrible monster that lives in the Chaos Wastes. Front and center, we have the Chaos champion, Kaeroph the First Born. He is on foot, the only champion we have on foot. He's got Chaos armor, a shield, a great weapon. I believe the initial advancement he rolled up was +1 strength. In the back, we have Beliar the Cull. He is an ogre with a great weapon. We also have Abel, Angstag's child, who is a chaos troll. And rounding out the list, we have 2 marauder horsemen with flails, 4 chaos hounds, and 5 marauders on foot also with flails. And here we have the table all set up and ready to play. Those are my guys at the bottom. We're both lined up on the left-hand side. It's a little less crowded with terrain. I've got my chosen Chaos Warriors and Marauders ready to crest that hill and face off against the enemy warband, while Scalding Blood Porridge and Sir Osis are taking a more cautious approach behind the stone ruin, and the Booze Hound is all the way over on the right, ready to do a flanking maneuver. On his side, he's got the fodder, the Marauders and the Chaos Hounds deployed on the left. With his champion, he has actually joined the unit with the Ogre, so they are a pair, which I think is a really good idea. I think it helps overcome the vulnerabilities of this guy being on foot, to have a big burly bodyguard following him around. He also has the Troll and the Marauder Horseman. All in all, I don't hate my odds here, but I think it is going to be a bit of a chess match to see which pieces we can get to line up with the other pieces. I'm not particularly threatened by the Chaos Hounds. I'm not worried about them. The Marauders are an interesting case. Most of my units shouldn't have much trouble making a big mess of them, causing lots of casualties, but those flails with their +2 strength on the first round of combat, they give a real good shot at putting some damage in if I put in anything really tough against them right away. So for example, even my champion, I'd be a little hesitant about just sailing him into those guys. His champion, ogre, and troll are the real problems. They can all take a punch and deliver one in return. Like I tried to do at the last game, I may have to try and just peel off some wounds from them before finishing them off with some of my tougher stuff. So the game is ready to begin, so we roll up for first turn and I get it, and I go ahead and advance most of my stuff onto that hill, give us a nice view of the battlefield. I move Scalding and Sir Osis behind them, so I've basically got 2 lines of battle here, the Ogre and the Champion being in reserve. The Booze Hound is flanking right. I'm not exactly sure what he's going to accomplish going over there, but I'm just looking for opportunities. In the Hagsbrood's turn, the Marauders and the Hounds move up pretty aggressively. The Hounds are moving through that forest, and we find out it's a venom thicket, which means that it's dangerous terrain, but it gives anyone inside of it poisoned attacks. The Hounds actually lose one of their models going through it, but they do have poisoned attacks now, and they do pass their panic test. The more powerful forces on the right are taking a bit more of a cautious approach. Looks like they're setting up countercharges. It's back to my turn, and I think those Chaos Hounds have moved just a little bit too far forward, and I think those Marauders are in a great place to charge them. I think I can destroy them, overrun to safety between the Horsemen and the Marauders. Yeah, I think my opponent was a little bit too reckless with his advance on this one. The remainder of my troops just take up slightly different positions to get a good view of the fight to come, except of course for the Booze Hound, who has completed its flanking maneuver and now is behind the Ogre, the Champion, and the Troll. In the close combat phase, the leg biters do me proud, and they kill off all the hounds for no loss. Those Marauders are initiative 4, so they get to strike first, so we don't even get to see those hounds try and strike back with their poisoned attacks. Unfortunately, they get a really short overrun, so they just kind of stumble into the woods a little bit. They don't take any casualties from the dangerous terrain, and they do have poisoned attacks for what it's worth. And it is far enough so that they're not going to get charged by the marauders on the left or the horsemen on the right. But it was a very short overrun nonetheless. In further good news, the Marauder horsemen fail their panic test for seeing the hounds butchered and take off. They actually flee through the champion and the ogre, which passed their panic test. The Marauders over on the left also passed their panic test, but this is more good news for me. This game's going a lot better than the last one. It's back to the Hagsbrood, and the downside of the Marauder charge is that they are still in the charge arc of the champion and the ogre. So Kaeroph and Balair charge into the flank of the Marauders. Those guys are probably going to die, and probably, even with those poisoned attacks, not going to take any wounds with them. In good news, as the ogre and the champion move in, they both have to take dangerous terrain tests for moving through that venom thicket, and the champion ends up taking a wound, goes straight through that armor, and now he's down to just one wound remaining. The Marauder horsemen get a little unlucky and continue to flee towards the table edge. And the Marauders and the Troll decide that their boss and the ogre has got that combat sorted out, and so they continue to advance on the remainder of my forces. In the close combat phase, my Marauders direct their attacks against that champion, but cannot pick off the last wound on that guy. In return, however, they get really lucky, and they only lose 2 guys to all those great weapon attacks and the ogre's stomp. Again, we are forgetting about the ogre charge rule, but we're both forgetting about it, so it probably evens out. Anyway, I managed to pass my break test, my 3 or less break test, so they are still in the combat. They can't reform. They failed the test to do that. But this is all good news so far. Back to the Louts of Chaos, and with the Marauders holding up the command unit of the opposing army, it's time for the rest of the guys to get into the fight. Scalding Blood Porridge charges into the Troll. We'll see if he can do a little bit better than he did against the Troll last round. I also get a double charge on the Marauders, and this I'm very happy with. Harold Drownsodden, the Chosen, and the Pitmen both complete their charge into those guys. I think those Marauders are in a bit of a pickle. The only bad news in all this is that my champion, Sir Osis, was supposed to join Scalding Blood Porridge in his charge against that troll, and again, Horsey is just not moving real well today. Fails the charge, and Scalding's got to go in alone. That is one slow horse. So straight to the close combat phase, we start with the ogre versus the troll. Both of them managed to put 1 wound on each other, which means that Scalding has won that combat by 1, and the troll goes and fails its break test. So he takes off. Unfortunately, he does outrun the pursuing ogre, but you can see him getting chased over towards the waiting jaws of the boozehound there. Again, the leg biters fail to put any damage on the champion, and in return they are all slaughtered, which really should have happened a round earlier, but hey, way to hang in there a little bit, guys. Kaeroph and Balair reform to the center of the board. That gives them a pretty good view of the Pitmen and my Chosen slaughtering 3 of the Marauders. The Marauders aren't able to do any damage back with their flails, which is pretty lucky. Unsurprisingly, the Marauders break. They run a good 10 inches, and so neither of my Chaos Armored guys can run them down. That stuff's just too heavy. So with a lot of these combats going my way, it's back to the Hagsbrood's turn. They try to salvage something of the situation by attempting a long charge against Sir Osis, but it's too far away, and those guys being on foot, the dice roll just don't come up, and they fail the charge. Quick side note on that charge with Kaeroph and Balair on Sir Osis. Sir Osis does have a throwing axe, so he does try and stand and shoot as his reaction, but he misses, and beyond which, they actually don't even come within range of the axe. So even if he had stuck a wound through it, probably wouldn't have counted since they didn't actually make it into his range. Meanwhile, however, the Marauders, the Horsemen, and the Troll all managed to rally, so there is some good news. Sensing victory, the Louts of Chaos start dipping into the celebratory booze, and so we get a really blurry picture for this round. Sorry about that. The Chosen and the Warriors recharge the Marauders over on the left. I charge the Ogre back into the Troll, and I throw in the Chaos Hound into the rear. I managed to figure out that I shouldn't do this the last time, and this time I guess my brain fell out of my head, and I went and charged in the Chaos Hound. The thinking, of course, being that I get a nice +2 combat resolution for charging in the rear, but I forget that there's no way this hound is going to survive. I was kind of thinking, well, maybe if he has to distribute some attacks back to the Chaos Hound, that'll take some heat off of the ogre, but he doesn't need to do that. He's going to get a free stomp on the war beast, so it's not doing me any good, and in fact, it's probably giving away free combat resolution. Sir Osis still doesn't like the looks of charging into that ogre and the champion, so he's gonna bank left behind the forest there. Maybe lend his leadership in case the Chosen and warriors decide to fail spectacularly against those last two marauders. More drunk photography in the close combat phase. The marauders are both killed by the Chosen and the warriors, and they just reform back to the center of the table. In better photography but poorer tactics, both the ogre and the troll fail to hurt each other, but like I said, that troll gets a free stomp attack against the boozehound. I'm looking for that one to come up to keep him alive, but unfortunately he does get squashed, and so if I hadn't charged him in, I would have won the combat because of the charge, but because I did, that's 1 wound to 1 charge, and so it ends up being a tie. Next Hagsbrood turn, the Marauder Horsemen are finally moving back into the battle. Kaeroph and Beliar got nothing to do but continue to reform and try and face my guys. In the hand-to-hand combat phase, again, the ogre and the troll fail to hurt each other. That ogre has just got a spectacularly hard head. So it's a tie combat. We go back to the Louts of Chaos. I see an opportunity to kind of clean up the rest of the forces before I concentrate fire on the ogre and the champion. So I go and I declare a charge with Sir Osis into the troll. I'm going to sort out that combat once and for all. Unfortunately, that venom thicket that I run through, now it's my turn to take a wound as I crash through that thing. Horsey just not careful about moving away from the low-lying tree branches, and Sir Osis takes a big bump on the head. I also go for a hey, why not charge from the pitmen, my Chaos Warriors, into the Marauder Horsemen. They were in my line of sight, and they are rewarded for their audacity by completing a very long charge into those guys. Those horsemen are in a lot of trouble. Sure enough, it takes no time for the 2 warriors to kill off both of the Marauder cavalry, and they reform back to the center again. But disaster strikes. The Chaos Steed, the Champion, and the Ogre all fail to hurt the Troll. Now it's the Troll's turn to attack, and he has a Vomit attack. A single Strength 5 hit, allowing no armor save, which is absolutely the perfect tool to use against a wounded Chaos Champion. Sure enough, the Troll barfs on Sir Osis, and he is so disgusted and shocked by this that he just falls over, Horsey joining him. So he is out as a casualty. The Ogre now has lost the combat. He breaks. He does manage to get away, but this was not how I was hoping that side of the board would turn out. Hagsbrood turn again, and now the Troll passes its stupidity and charges into the fleeing Ogre, who cannot run away fast enough and is destroyed by the pursuing Troll. Kaeroph and Beliar continued their very slow pirouette in the center of the table, getting the Chosen and Chaos Warriors back into their front arc. So at this point, I've lost 2 of my most powerful models, and all of the strength of my opponent's force is still there. This would probably be a good time for me to voluntarily rout and maybe save some of those casualty tests. But again, I think there's a penalty for doing so, so we're going to keep fighting. I do consider just running away on the table, trying to make it to the end of the game and preserve some models on the board so that my opponent doesn't get the +2 favor points for completely wiping me out. But these scenarios, these pitch battle scenarios, are 12 turns long, and I figure that given that amount of time, the Ogre, the Champion, and the Troll are eventually going to chase me down. So I go for a different strategy. Instead, I'm going to go for a Hail Mary charge. Both the Chosen and the Pitmen attempt a charge on the Champion and the Ogre. We're basically doing a kamikaze assassination run. We're going to try and kill off that champion with our attacks and at least get some points for killing the enemy champion. So I try it. It's both long charges. The Chosen, Harold Drownsodden, doesn't make it in, but the Pitmen do. We are speedy today. Unfortunately, with 4 Strength 4 attacks, I am unable to put the final wound through onto Kaeroph, and both of my warriors are killed in return. I don't have a picture for this next round, but really all that happens in the Hagsbrood turn is that the Troll passes stupidity and moves up to join his bosses. So it's back to my turn, and I'm going to stick with the plan such as it is, and Harold Drownsodden is going to attempt a long charge against the champion and the ogre. He gets to thread between the woods so he doesn't have to make a dangerous terrain test, and he does it. He manages to get another charge through, so we're going to take one more shot at this. This time we're weapon skill 6, so we get a 3+ to hit, and we have 3 strength 4 attacks. And Harold does it. Harold sticks the final wound through onto Kaeroph. He falls down. In return, Harold is, of course, squished by the ogre, but at least I got something out of this. So the Hagsbrood wins. All my guys have been wiped out. We go on to the post-game. So first we roll on the injury table for Sir Osis, my champion. And I get pretty lucky here. I get bitter enemy. So I roll on the chart and I find out that from now on, I hate Kaeroph the First Born. That's not bad. I would have been okay if, say, I had hated the entire warband, but in small games like this, it's pretty likely that our champions will end up fighting each other, so I'm okay with that. Just so mad at that guy. I get pretty lucky with the rest of the casualty rolls, and I don't take any more losses. I also end up with 4 favor points, which is nice because now that puts me at 6 favor points earned total, which gives me another roll on the advancement chart. I get to roll on the Khorne advancement chart for this, and I end up getting the Axe of Khorne. So I'm pretty happy that I didn't give him a great weapon or anything like that, because now I have this weapon that gives me Killing Blow. I would have rather preferred a stat increase or something like that, but considering all the enemy champions have great weapons, spoiler alert, this means that whenever they go and charge into my guy, they're going to run the risk of me just fluking a 6 on the wound roll and instantly killing anyone that tries to get me. Hopefully that'll give my opponents a little something extra to think about. In return, the Hagsbrood managed to get a mighty 10 favor points again, which is going to give Kaeroph the First Born at least 1 advancement roll. I'm not exactly sure what he gets. I actually think he may have rolled up a strength increase for 2 advancement rolls after this game, and since he already had a strength increase, they're both basically wasted. I'm not 100% sure, but I think at least one player in the group did get hit with some bad advancement rolls along those lines, and it may have been him. But that's it for this game. Leave a comment below if you have any questions, observations, or concerns. The Louts of Chaos continue to struggle in the early rounds of this campaign, but plenty of time to bring it around. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next one.